Did you hear Shaq last night? He said Steph should be in the GOAT conversation. Not GOAT point guard, the GOAT conversation. He said, I played against Mike, Kobe, obviously, LeBron, It's interesting because he's such the polar opposite of who Shaq was as a basketball player. The Warriors head into Madison Square Garden last night on the back end of a back-to-back. They were in Charlotte the night before. Context is everything, right? As always. And that Charlotte game didn't look good, man. It didn't. There were casualties of war. GP2 gets his face rearranged. Steph sprains the ankle. And Jimmy, who had sat out the Sixers game due to back spasms, he looked cooked in Charlotte. Like Jimmy was not moving well in Charlotte. It looked like he didn't want to move out there, but perhaps feeling pressure of, being on a new team, signing an extension, he went out there and tried to tough it out. And they ended up pulling it out. But I thought that they had to spend more energy than you would have hoped for on the front end of a back-to-back, and then guys being chipped up. They're older. And so my thought was like, hey, let's just punt on this Knicks game. Rest the vets. You take the L, but then you can finish the road trip strong. For some reason, I thought we were going to be in Detroit. I thought there were two more games, Brooklyn and Detroit. And I had this vision of like, dang, what's going to happen is we're going to go all out to try to beat the Knicks, come up short, and then be spent for the rest of the road trip. And it'll end up costing us like 3 games instead of the 1 if we had just sat the big 3. Hey, but your boy's wrong all the time. I'm not here to be right. I'm here to just tell you what I see and be a fan with y'all, right? And needless to say, I was wrong. Now, once I found out that the Detroit game was back home, I thought it made more sense to go for this one, as well as when Towns was announced that he was out for the Knicks. I was like, okay, it seems more feasible. And you knew, even when I said that they should punt on the game, I knew they wouldn't. TNT, Madison Square Garden, Steph Curry, I knew it wasn't happening, but that would have been my strategy. And once again, your boy was wrong. And I think the first thing that I maybe didn't take into account is the juice that Madison Square Garden provides teams. You may be an older team, a tired team, but you get in that arena and then you compound that with the fact that Steph's there, right? And Steph in Madison Square Garden. And so even if the Warriors were tired and road weary, they played with more energy than the Knicks last night. Give me a minute to tell you guys about today's sponsor, Factor. It's the longest standing sponsorship on the channel for a reason, because I continue to enjoy what they provide. And that is fresh, never frozen food delivered directly to your doorstep. It's created by a team of gourmet chefs that use ingredients of integrity to keep you feeling good all day long. Now, you know the saying, time is money, right? With Factor, there's no meal prep, there's no dishes, 2 minutes and your meal is ready. But what good would convenience be if it wasn't good? It's good. I highly recommend, there's a lot of meals I recommend, but my favorite is the peanut Buddha bowl. I save it for Wednesdays. It's kind of like a treat to get over the hump. But you've got over 35 options to choose from each week. Smart Cow, Protein Plus, Chef's Choice. They've got a bunch of snacks, breakfasts, smoothies, juices. So head over to factor75.com or click the link in the description and use the code 50alchemy for 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's 50alchemy at factor75.com for 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Now, the first thing that stuck out to me as the game started was pods on OG Anunoby. I was like, that's pretty interesting. Wouldn't Jimmy have that matchup? That seemed weird. And I thought, okay, maybe are they trying to bait the ball into OG's hands to just get it out of Brunson's hands? Because if you watch the Knicks, Brunson, he's liable to take 30 shots. They play Brunson ball, and then especially without Towns. So I thought, are they trying to just bait the OG matchup? And OG, what do you have? 29 points? He played well, but Brunson in turn only took 18 shots, only 7 free throws. I thought Moses once again did a really good job not letting Brunson, just foul bait the whole time. So that was interesting, but I want to focus on Jimmy because I think that was the story. That was the story, because I don't know about y'all, but after that Charlotte game, my alarms were up, right? And I had spoken about it. It was like, listen, we know when he's right, how good it looks, but half of the discussion was how often is he going to be right? Back spasms, he wasn't moving in Charlotte at all. And, I was thinking to myself, maybe it's a mood thing with Jimmy. And I'd rather it be that than the body betraying him. But maybe every now and then we're going to get games where Jimmy's just kind of moody. He's, what is he, 35 years old? Like, and he just doesn't want to move out there. And then the next game he looks fine, right? Because they made a real concerted effort last night to put the ball in his hands. They almost force-feeded him the ball, and you saw it pay dividends. And I think the dopest part about it is you can see, like, it's so clear when he steadies the ship. In particular, when Draymond starts to boil hot. There's a bad call here, there's a bad call there, and Draymond stomping his feet and yelling at the refs. And in the past, it would snowball because Draymond would end up still being the hub of the offense. So when Draymond, he's frustrated, he's mad, now he kind of maybe gets over-aggressive, the turnovers pile up. But now with Jimmy there, when Draymond gets frustrated and he's coming to a tipping point, they're like, no, we'll just go to Jimmy. We'll slow things down. He's going to get to the line. And, you know, he does so many little nuanced things. As I'm learning his game and watching the tape on him, he is one of the most deceptive players that I've watched play. And I mean that in a good way, where there's all this nuanced deception. End of the third quarter, Steph is sitting, and he gets Buddy a three. But if you watch the tape, it's in today's breakdown. I'll put the link in the description. Looney's coming up for a screen, right? And OG is on Buddy, but he's kind of hedging over to the pick and roll, right? Jimmy waits till the exact moment that Looney's getting ready to set it, and he kind of hang dribbles, like, here I come. I'm about to come off this screen. And within the hang, he kicks it to Buddy, and Buddy hits the three. But it pulled OG. It pulled OG a step or two towards him, so he couldn't close out to Buddy. There was another split action with him and Draymond late, and Pods was in it as well. And he waves to Pod, hey, Pods, I'm going to come set the screen. Come get the ball. And as he starts the wave, he hooks OG's arm or whoever was on him's arm and spins off it for a layup. There's all these little mini setups that enable him to do what he does, right? Because in real time, live, you're like, dang, he's one of those players where you're kind of like, dang, how is he doing this? No, like, there is a method to it. And there's all these little micro skills that are super impressive from Jimmy. And so fingers crossed, man, because I was down bad after the Charlotte game. I was like, dude, this looks like a disaster right now. And for them to come out and get this win and feed off the crowd and close it out decisively. Now, the Knicks certainly helped that because it's so weird to see a Thibodeau team play that poor of defense. And I understand if you're a Knicks fan, like, you don't have Towns, and he's a huge part of that, right? But the defense is an issue. And the collective IQ defensively for this Knicks team, I have a hard time taking them serious as a contender. There's just too many mental errors. And you saw us really take advantage of that in transition in the second half. Buddy Hield. I had tweeted out, I think at halftime, when he was like 1 of 8, I was like, he's just too inconsistent to play because you don't know what you're going to get from him night in and night out, right? And that's like coach talk, kind of. You hear people say like, okay, Looney, you know you're getting rebounds every night, right? You know, like, you can point to each guy, and for the most part, if you're a good team, you know what they're going to give you every night, regardless, even if they're playing well. And with Buddy, it's just so inconsistent, but he doesn't hang his head. He pushed through, and for the second night in a row, he had huge late game surges offensively for us. I'm interested in the Jimmy Buddy minutes. They haven't played very many minutes together, but late third, start of the fourth in this game, that was huge. That was huge. And I had proposed this question to you because, ironically, Klay Thompson today, this version of Klay, and Buddy are kind of the same player, right? Like, they're these super streaky shooters who really make you nervous with their floor game and like their decision making elsewhere on the court, right? And I know sentimentally in just, you know, as a fan, it's like, I'd rather have Klay. You know, he's bigger and what he's meant, you know, to the organization. I would push back on that simply for the fact of the vibes. I think that Klay understood it and the Warriors understood it. Like, the vibes in the past, they couldn't get past the past, if that makes sense. And I think that it would have been very difficult for Pods and Moody and these guys to take the steps that you wanted with Klay still here. Meanwhile, Buddy, as frustrating as he is, bro, I don't know if I've ever seen a worse passer in the NBA. Like, I have to give him credit for his vibes. He never hangs his head. And he never gets up. He doesn't have an ego as far as getting scolded. He kind of like knows. It's almost as if he knows that he screws up so much. And so, yeah, I don't know. A part of me, I won't lie to you though, I'm like, dang, the fact that he's had these two big fourth quarters or these late game scoring outbursts, it just means Kerr's going to double down on his minutes, right? And that's a little spooky. I'd almost like to see Knox in that role. And then you saw Pods have a nice, what do you have, like 19 points? He really got off to a good start. And I think what we're seeing, listen, I understand he has his limitations. And I do think that the next phase for him getting downhill is just dirty dining, is what I'm calling it now since Jimmy Butler's here, meaning just foul bait, just get to the line. Because the Euro deceleration step stuff, it works really well in transition. But in the half court, I'd like to see him just kind of get to 2 feet, slam into somebody and get to the line, being more intentional with that. But as the three ball continues, he's continuing to shoot more of them and he's making them when they matter. I think what we're seeing with Pods right now in year 2 is he's not a guy in the playoffs that a team can disrespect, because that's how the playoffs work, right? In these playoff series, teams decide 1-2 players in a rotation, like, we're not really worried about you. Like, okay, beat us, right? I don't think you can do that with Pods, even in year 2. I think the confidence that he's shown, the ability to push through his slump, the confidence the team has shown in him, I think that would be a mistake. And he will eat a team up if they try to disrespect him in that way. Moses, you could say the same. Moses hasn't been shooting the ball as well, but defensively, he was a factor, picking up ball pressure, playing passing lanes. You got to be excited about those two. Kuminga should be back Saturday. I did want to talk on Quentin Post here a little bit because he struggled in the fourth quarter with the physicality. And I think that he has to own his space a little better. You're seeing guys, especially when he catches on the perimeter, they're just getting super close to his body and he's getting like narrow and tall. And I get he wants to protect the ball, but throw a bow, clear a guy out. I'm sure Kerr, they won't be mad if as long as it's not a meaningful foul in crunch time. Foul a guy. Let the league know, like, no, I'll throw a bow. I'll knock you over, because we can see that that's in him. And so while he did struggle there in the fourth quarter, you see how competitive and fiery he is. I suspect he's going to figure out pretty quickly to be more physical, especially like in crunch time, right? Last but not least, the chef. How dare I leave Steph for last, right? He was moving pretty good on that ankle, right? When he was 3 of 10 in that first half, he gets to the line. The osmosis of Jimmy, and you've heard Steve post-game say, hey, like, we're finding an identity, right? And it's more of a grinding team, but I think it's more of a dynamic team that can play in different ways. And you're just seeing Jimmy's influence in all sorts of ways, because Steph got going by getting to the line in the start of that third quarter. And how often can you say that, right? First off, the refs got to allow it. They got to blow the whistle, but he got going. And this whole road trip, it's really been this way, where he's got like 9 or 10 assists, right? And I think that that's a good sign for everyone. And it's almost as if Jimmy shows so much confidence in the role players. Steph and Draymond can't help but show more as well, right? But I also think there's an element of Steph like feeling like, oh, I don't got to give us 30, 35 because I do have Jimmy. Let me distribute more. And I think it lessens the physical burden on him when he can just make passes. We know how effective his gravity is. And so he gets going, and now he's hitting Hezzy nights. The Hezzy night is crazy, right? I'm just super happy about this win, y'all. And, now don't lose sight of things, right? You talk about trap games. We've had some trap games here of late. You go into Brooklyn after an emotional win, where they're playing like 5 games in a week, and you don't want to get caught slipping, because as we know, all wins and losses count the same. You got to finish off this road trip strong. And then Saturday's going to be a big one, because Detroit, if you ain't paying attention, they're a legit playoff team. Cade Cunningham is really a him. He's turned into the lead guy that people suspected he would be. They're athletic. They're flying around, and we're going to integrate Jonathan Kuminga. Fingers crossed. They push back Kuminga's date, bro. I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to hop on live. I know I don't be doing the lives as much as I say. They push back Kuminga's return date. I'm going on live and I'm cussing everybody out. But yeah, man, it's funny how, my guy Nas, he said, Al, you can't be so emotional game to game. That's what we do as fans, right? Admit it. At the Charlotte game, it felt like the season was falling apart. They rally, keep it together, show up in the Garden, and now it's like, oh man, okay. We still got to keep our eye on Jimmy's body and his back and his game to game, just how spry he looks. But got to feel pretty good so far right now as far as this road trip goes. They got to finish it off in Brooklyn and keep rolling. What are we? 6th seed, five seed. The 5th seed is in sight. Are we going to get to a point where we're trying to like matchup hunt? Like, who do you want? I don't know if you want the Lakers round 1. I don't know if you want that. Anyway, hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.